Hello and welcome to the Strategic Business Leader September 2023 mock exam debrief. It's about a company called VTM, and my name is Ashim Kumar. I'm an expert SBL tutor, and I'm working with the ACCA in this production. I'm an FCCA and I also have an MBA in International Business Export Management from the University of London. I'm an SBL tutor guru, or at least that's what the ACCA calls me, and I've been teaching various ACCA subjects for over 30 years, which have actually been worked out quite well because a lot of those topics feed in to SBL, so it helps me in my teaching and, more importantly, helps my students understand more about SBL. I've been training SBL since September 2018, and I'm pleased to say I've had a number of prize winners since then. And as well as my academic or training background, I've also led two international businesses, one in Central and Eastern Europe and the other in the Middle East and North Africa, where I was with the EY Training Center as executive director, running 6 centers in that region. So that's me. Now, if you're watching this, you will know that as from the September 2023 examination, there is a new structure for the SBL paper, and we're going to start off by going through what that structure is and what it means to our exam preparation. Right, the first thing, so on the left-hand column it's the old structure, on the right-hand column it's a new structure. First thing we see, the duration has been shortened to 3 hours and 15 minutes, so that brings it in line with the other strategic professional exam papers. Those of you who have seen an SBL paper under the old system, you'll see that there are, the exhibits which are included in the examination are very long, and there are lots of them. Now, what's happened in the new structure is there are far fewer exhibits and they are much shorter, which is a bit of a relief. And most of the information has been taken out of the exhibits and put into a pre-seen case study, which is given or released by the ACCA 2 weeks before the exam date. So students have time to familiarize themselves with the history and the context of the company that's going to be examined. The number of tasks has been limited to 3, each one with subtasks. And the professional skills, although they remain the same, there are 5 professional skills, in total adding up to 20 marks in the exam. They're only tested once, so each time a professional skill is tested, it carries 4 marks with it, which is also a change. And you'll find that on the TestReach platform, when you attempt a task, you are not able to see any of the other tasks, okay? And each task is completed on a separate response option, for example, the word processor. Couple of things to say about the pre-scene. The first, as we've already said, it was introduced to shorten the exam and also to give us some background in good time before the exam. Now, what the ACCA say about the pre-scene, this is important, don't spend time doing lots and lots of additional research on it, okay? You are not required to be an expert on that industry or a company similar to the one in the pre-scene. By the way, these companies are fictitious, they don't really exist. Also, the ACCA says don't use these to question guess. The questions will come from additional information that is provided in the actual examination. They will not come from the pre-scene. So the pre-scene is only there to give you some context so that you can, when you answer the tasks in the real examination, you can put them in an appropriate context. Okay? So that is what they say about the pre-scene. What about our approach to it? Well, different people have different approaches. Excuse me. Yeah, sorry about that. Different people have different approaches to the pre-scene. The one I recommend is to actually do a SWOT analysis. In other words, go through the information in the pre-scene and pick up information that you think is important. It's the company's organization's strengths and weaknesses, the environmental opportunities and threats. And it's really helpful if you can do this with a study buddy or in a group, okay, because then you'll see things others don't see and vice versa. And also, so for example, if you're given some information about the competitive environment, clearly that is a potential threat, and it gives you an opportunity to think about the different competitive strategies that may be available to this company. Okay, something like this. Also, it helps you to think about what might happen in the future and therefore something you might be faced with in the examination. So, for example, if the organization doesn't have an online presence, is it possible that in the real exam they're going to say, we have a new IT director who wants to introduce some more sophisticated IT in the company. All right, and then once we've consolidated all that information in our SWOT, then have a look at the areas which are likely to be tested from that. Okay, so if, for example, we're given something about the company's corporate governance structure, then it's possible that in the real exam we'll be asked to, critically comment on it, or if the company's thinking of going public, we'll be expected to say, well, that's fine, except its corporate governance structure needs to change before it can do that. Okay, something like that. All right, so what you'll find is when you go through that, you'll find that there are some areas which always come up. Okay, risk management always comes up, governance always comes up, strategy always comes up, ethics and sustainability, corporate social responsibility, that always comes up either directly or indirectly as part of a question, something like that. All right, and then there are other areas such as project management which come up from time to time. But you'll find that those areas pretty much you can count on. And if there are areas that you're not sure about in any of those topics that you've picked up in your SWOT analysis, then have a look at some past exam papers or exam questions on those to refresh your memories. Now, big health warning. I'm not guaranteeing that just because there's a topic in the pre-scene that topic will definitely come up. It won't. We're just trying to understand the context. Okay, so please remember that. Right, so as we've already said, the time available for the examination is 3 hours and 15 minutes. 15 minutes for planning. Now, there are, again, different ways of doing this. One way is to spend those 15 minutes on reading the exhibits. If you choose to do it that way, then look through them, see what's going on, highlight some key information. But for goodness sake, if you're given numbers, which you may well be, a financial statement or something, for goodness sake, please do not start actually doing any calculations, because you don't know which calculations you will need. So don't do that. All right, so that's one option. The other option, of course, is to analyze the tasks and leave the exhibits until you start actually answering the questions. The second is my preferred option. So when I say analyze the task, what do I mean? I mean, for each task, highlight the key words. Sorry, that should be words, not wards. In the additional information given for the task and the task itself. So when I say key words, and here there's a lot of information on the ACCA Study Hub, all right, where I talk about, which words to highlight. Okay, so for example, if it's a report, highlight the word report. If the question says, identify the impacts of the risks and their mitigation, then I would highlight impact of risk and I would highlight the word mitigation. And basically you're highlighting it just to make sure that you are actually answering the questions when you come around to doing that. Another thing you'll do when you're planning using your tasks, you'll link your task to your exhibit. Now in the new structure it's much easier to do that. Okay, so very often task 1 will be linked to exhibit 1, task 2 might be linked to exhibits 2 and 3, and so on. Much easier to do it here. Also write down in your planning time the finishing time for your answer based on 1.8 minutes per mark. So if you have a 20-minute question, that includes sorry, I beg your pardon, a 20-mark question that includes your professional skills marks, all right, then you will finish 36 minutes after you start writing your answers, right? So 20 multiplied by 1.8. Note the number of points to be made. So if you've got 10 marks to a question, we work on the basis of 2 marks per point made, and therefore for a 10-mark question we will aim to make 5 points. Again, why do we work on the basis of 2 marks per point made? Again, I refer you please to lots of webinars and other information where I have explained why it's 2 marks per point, okay, and how to get that. So I talk about state, explain, apply, and I talk about the so what. There are only 15 minutes to do this, so don't start thinking about what to say. This should be a mechanical process just to calm you down at the beginning of the examination, okay? Don't start planning your answers at this stage, and then as soon as your 15 minutes is over, whether or not you've completed your planning, start writing, start earning marks. Right, so here you are, you're earning your marks. Remember, you can only see one task at a time. I've already mentioned that. Remember to get the format right. If it's a report, put in report format. That's from, to, date, subject, introduction, and recommendation or conclusion. Always, always, always in a report. If it's a briefing paper or any other type of document, do everything else, so from, to, date, subject, but don't do an introduction and conclusion or recommendation. All right, just make sure you do that. If you don't, you will lose professional skills marks. End each section on time. Okay, it's really critical that you do that because you need to leave enough time for the later questions. And you won't do that if you overrun on the earlier question times. Okay, the ACCA has often said that the students who do best are those who actually have a go at the whole exam paper, all right, rather than doing really well in one question or two and then ignoring the last. For each point made, work on the basis of state, explain, apply, answering the so what question, and 2 marks, which is going to take you about 3.5 minutes to write. So please remember, earning 2 marks isn't easy. It's 3.5 minutes worth of writing. That's quite a lot. Okay, so don't think that by writing 1 or 2 sentences you're going to earn your 2 marks, because you won't. And then make sure you read the question carefully, understand it by highlighting the key words, thinking about what the examiner is asking for, and then absolutely critically answering the question. Okay, the examiner's most common complaint is that the question that was asked for was not answered. For example, if the question says, what are the advantages of using integrated reporting in a company, do not, for goodness sake, go into a huge detailed explanation of what integrated reporting is. The examiner is asking, what are the advantages for this particular company to use integrated reporting? So all that time you spend writing about integrated reporting is wasted. 0 marks. Don't do it. Okay, so now we move on to the pre-scene analysis for this mock exam, VTM. Okay, so this is the pre-scene information for the September 2023 mock examination released by the ACCA. Now, this is a typical pre-scene structure, and we've seen a couple of specimen exams as well, which were released by the ACCA. There's an introductory area, then there's industry information, and then there's information about the company, which is called VTM. So what is in the industry information? Well, in this particular case study, the industry is electric vehicles, and it talks about different types of electric vehicles. It talks about the benefits of electric vehicles, a little bit about the market for electric vehicles in Courlandia, which is where this company is based, market size and growth, technology, charging infrastructure, yes, so charging the batteries for electric vehicles, the different options that exist, environmental sustainability of electric vehicles. Remember, we're still talking about the industry. Consumer considerations, what are consumers most worried about in this industry, etc. And then section 3, we go to an overview of VTM, all right, which is the company itself, and there we have some background, okay, where it comes from, who owns it, and we have a list of the directors there. The different products. By the way, don't spend too long on the directors. When you're given a list of directors and so on, don't spend too long learning what each director does and their background and so on, because it will be available. The case study will be available to you in the examination, right, on the platform, on the CBE. So you can always look it up. The important thing is that you know where to look, so you don't spend too long looking around the whole of the case study. It talks about the various products that this company produces, its suppliers, facilities, employment, risks. As I say, risks always come up. Some website extracts. So here they talk about mission, vision, and values. So it suggests that we're going to be asked about their strategy and how that fits into their vision and values. And then there's some financial information. Now, don't sit there learning all of this either. Okay, if and when you need it in the examination, all right, you can look it up. And then it tells you how these numbers are calculated. So that's what a typical pre-seen case study will look like. Okay, so how do we do this SWOT analysis that I've been talking about? Well, let me share with you the one I did for VTM, Voltec Motors, okay? So I've got a box, my quadrants, strengths, weaknesses, etc. And as I read through the pre-seen, I will put what I think to be key information somewhere in my quadrant, and if it doesn't fit easily into in any of the quadrants, I'll put it into here, additional information. Okay, so for example, their mission and so on, their vision, okay, that would be additional information. It's just a fact. All right, or some factual information. Fully electric vehicles, also known as BEVs, they require charging through an external power source. Well, that's also just a fact, okay? So really the aim is to get me thinking about the detail of the case study, of the environment, and also to basically put the case study away and use this as my last minute revision tool, if you like, before I walk into the exam. So what do I include in my SWOT? Well, let me give you some examples. Strength, a small range of electric vehicles that cater to various customer preferences and market segments. There are currently 4 models in the range. So as soon as you see more than one product in the range, you start to think about portfolio analysis and diversification of risk, or at least you should. VTM manufactures its own batteries in-house for use in its vehicles, so it has control over its supply chain, which is important, okay, because it's not reliant on an external supplier that can exert bargaining power. In addition, they may be able to sell these batteries independently of their cars, and so there's an additional revenue stream. An example of weaknesses, well, we see an imbalance in the board of directors, 5 executives and 3 non-executives. And so we start asking questions about how effective these NEDs are. Are they influential? Are they influential? Are they protecting the owner's interest? All right. Who is responsible for risk management? Because it should be NEDs and so on. Okay. So basically, as you go along, as you see some information that you think is noteworthy, put it somewhere on this document. All right. And think about what it might mean. Looking now at the opportunities, so founded over 20 years ago, has grown from a startup to a prominent player. So I'm thinking, okay, it's at the growth stage in a growing market. Okay, it's unlikely to be profitable yet, but it is a long-term strategic opportunity. So it's a star, if you like, if we're thinking about the BCG matrix, right, or on the product life cycle, it's in the growth matrix, growth stage, which means that any organization in those stages will typically be cash flow negative. They'll be absorbing cash to help keep market share as in a growing market, but we do expect them to become cash cows at some stage. So that's an opportunity. Okay, a threat. Well, it's the same fact, but it could also be a threat. So it's at the growth stage. It's vulnerable to cash flow shortages. Yeah, sales are not particularly high at the moment because it's still growing, and it's also vulnerable to insufficient infrastructure. For example, charging stations. So, there is a cap on the number of cars it can sell simply because there are not enough charging stations encouraging people to buy these cars, and that cap is outside VTM's control, and that's why it's a threat. Okay, now you should be able to have access to these. Okay, on the study hub, so I'll let you have a look at them in your own time.